So, how do you trust a psychologist? It sounds like a simple question, right? But for so many people, it's really not. It's actually a pretty profound and often painful question, usually born from some really tough experiences. So today, we're going to dive into this. And we'll start by looking at a very personal story that really gets to the heart of why this trust can be so hard to find.
I see a lot of people looking for psychologists, and I have a question. How do you trust them? A little about my experience. Occur as a result of post-traumatic stress. Since I was little, I visited my first psychologist when I was a child. Big promises. I heard that we would throw out intrusive thoughts and such. One parent took out a loan to pay for the treatment. A year passed without any results. Second psychologist, it started well, but I heard her telling my mother that my drawers were messy. They were not in order. Third psychologist, everything started well, but we became very close. At one time, I listened to her, and she shared her fears and nightmares with me. They bothered her a lot. I have more stories, but they are even worse than this. Apart from personal experience, I also listen to the experiences of friends, and there is a lot to be said there. After a while, a person shared a story with me that everyone who studies to be a psychologist has their own problems. I started to check this out. He was right. He found that psychology students suffer from panic attacks. I was horrified to discover that they don't even know how to stop them. Depression, I won't even comment there, and so on. To this day, I find that practitioners of this don't actually know how to help themselves. It's like going to a nutritionist with excess weight for help. You'll forgive me, I know it's not everyone, and yet.
After hearing a story like that feeling of skepticism is not just understandable, it's completely natural. I mean, of course it is. When you reach out for help, when you're vulnerable and you're met with broken promises and, violated boundaries, that just shakes the very foundation of trust. So the absolute first thing to say here is your feelings are completely and totally valid. Okay, so to move forward from this, it's really helpful to kind of deconstruct what actually went wrong here. Let's try to break these experiences down into specific issues. And look, this isn't about blaming anyone, it's about getting clear, gaining clarity so we can start to see what healthy professional help is supposed to look like.
Let's be really clear. What this person went through, these aren't the normal risks of doing therapy. No way. These are serious failures in professional practice. I mean, promising to throw out intrusive thoughts, it's an unrealistic promise. A professional's job is to guide a process, not guarantee some magical outcome. And then, discussing messy drawers with a parent, that's a huge breach of confidentiality and basic ethics. And the third one, a therapist sharing their own fears and nightmares with you, the client, that is a massive boundary violation. It completely flips the roles. None of this is okay.
When we go through a series of negative experiences like this, one after another, our mind does something that's actually very logical. It's trying to protect itself. And what it does is it generalizes. It takes these specific, really bad experiences, and it creates a new broad rule for survival. The whole system is broken. Or maybe you just can't trust anyone. This is a defense mechanism, plain and simple. Its only job is to try and keep us from getting hurt like that ever again.
And all of this really leads us to that core doubt that was brought up in the story, right? The big one. The idea that maybe therapists, they have their own unresolved problems. Is that actually true? Are we going for help from people who are just as wounded, or maybe even more so than we are?
Well, the simple answer is yes. And this isn't some big industry secret. A lot of people are drawn to psychology precisely because they've navigated their own difficulties. They're often sensitive people who have a really deep desire to understand the human mind, and that usually starts with trying to understand their own. That whole idea of the wounded healer, there's a lot of truth to it. The desire to help others heal often comes from a place of knowing what it's like to be wounded.
Okay, but here's the thing. This is the absolute key distinction. That personal experience, it can go one of two ways. It can be a huge liability, or it can be an incredibly powerful asset. It becomes a liability when those personal issues are unprocessed, and they start to leak into the therapy room. But it becomes an asset, a huge one, when those same experiences have been worked through. That creates a deep well of empathy. It leads to a real commitment to their own personal work and supervision, and it gives them the strength to hold really clear, firm professional boundaries. So you see, the really important question isn't if a therapist has their own problems. We all do. The real question, the one that matters, is this. Do they recognize their own stuff? Are they self-aware? Are they actively working on their own processes, through their own therapy, through supervision? That is the hallmark of a good, responsible professional.
So, given everything we've talked about, how on earth are you supposed to start building trust? It's a fair question. And the answer is, it's not about taking some blind leap of faith. It's about learning to look for clear, tangible signs, markers of professionalism and safety. So let's do that. Let's talk about what those markers actually are.
And please, remember this. Trust isn't a light switch you just flip on. In a good therapeutic relationship, it should never be demanded from you on day one. It's something that has to be earned. It gets built step by step, together, session by session, interaction by interaction. So what are some things you can actually look for? Let's call them green flags. Here are 5 of them. First, right from the start, they talk openly about boundaries, confidentiality, and what to expect. Second, they can actually explain their process to you, how they work. Third, they don't make big, grandiose promises about a cure. Instead, they talk about the process, about working together. Fourth, and this is a big one, the focus is always on you. They are not unloading their personal drama onto you. And fifth, if something feels off or isn't working for you, they're open to talking about it. And they can take responsibility for their part in the dynamic.
Okay, now I want to go just a little bit deeper for a moment, because for someone who has a history of trauma, this difficulty in trusting a therapist, well, it's not just about the bad experiences with a few professionals. It often connects back to a much, much earlier blueprint for how relationships work. Think about it. When our earliest caregivers, the very people who were supposed to be our rock, our source of safety, were instead unstable or unreliable or just chaotic, our nervous system learns a really fundamental lesson about the world. And that lesson is, this is not a safe place, and people will ultimately let you down. And that early experience, it writes this powerful internal script that we carry with us. And then every new disappointment just reinforces it, makes the writing bolder. The script basically says, nobody is stable enough. I have to rely only on myself. So when you then meet an incompetent professional later in life, it doesn't create that belief, but man, does it confirm it in the most painful way possible. And all of this really just brings us to a simple reality. Psychology, just like any other profession, whether it's medicine or law or teaching, it has a whole spectrum of competence. You're going to have some weak specialists, a lot of average ones, and then some who are really, really good. Your bad experiences, as real and as painful as they are, they don't represent the entire field. They represent one part of that spectrum. So we're going to end here. That question we started with, how do you trust a psychologist, is often, really, a stand-in for a much bigger, much deeper question we carry inside. And that question is, how do we learn to trust anyone or anything when our life experiences have taught us the exact opposite? The real therapeutic journey, when you find the right person to take it with, it's not just about fixing a problem. It's about slowly, carefully, and safely learning the answer to that very question.